Welcome to Bird for Joy, a show about discovering all the different ways that bird watching can bring joy into our lives. I'm Candilynn Fite, your gracious host and fledgling birder. Here at Bird for Joy, we focus on listening and watching the birds around us, being curious and learning what the birds have to teach us about joy, life, and ourselves. So grab your favorite beverage, settle on your perch, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Bird for Joy podcast, my birdiful friends. March marks the beginning of spring for those of us living in the Northern Hemisphere. We officially started spring on March 19th with the vernal equinox as we experience an equal amount of daylight and darkness in a 24-hour period. So, let me wish you happy spring, my friends. Spring symbolizes new life, beginnings, transformation, and growth. After several months of cold, dreary, and darkness, the spring season reawakens us, the environment bringing us and nature back to life. Spring may look different for us birders, depending on your location in the Northern Hemisphere. March generally is the start of spring migration, and from experience, the spring migration is much quicker than the fall migration. In the spring, birds are anxious to get to their breeding locations, and many of those species have traveled hundreds or thousands of miles from where they overwintered. As in the weather, where March is known to come in like a lion, cold temperatures, and go out like a lamb, warmer temperatures, spring bird migration seems to be a lot of in and out like a lion, meaning the migrating birds come in flocks of different species. Depending on what migration flyway you live in, will dictate which species will stop over in your area. For beginning birders, this can be a very confusing time, because the birds that you may encounter during the spring will likely not be the same birds that you encounter in the summer. Take, for instance, I live in South Central Texas. The spring migrants that wintered in South America most likely began their long journey north back in January. And by the time we start seeing these long traveling species, it might not be till March. Not only are they exhausted and starving, but they have one specific goal in mind, and that is to breed. Depending on where the species breeds, they may lay over for a few hours or a day or two before moving on. The spring migrants compete for food with the non-migratory species and those species that overwinter in particular areas. It's important to keep feeders and your bird baths clean and full during what some birders might call migration madness. Here's a rundown of the different species that I have either encountered on my property or heard flying overhead in the past 20 days of March. Now, these species that I'm going to name first are non-migratory, meaning that they're here year-round. The northern cardinal, blue jay, northern mockingbird, red-bellied woodpecker, pileated woodpecker, downy woodpecker, Carolina wren, Carolina chickadee, tufted titmouse, barred owl, great horned owl, eastern screech owl, red-shouldered hawk, American crow, the killdeer, Inca dove, and the mourning dove. Now, let's add to those species that overwinter here: the white-throated sparrow, the eastern phoebe, northern flicker, American goldfinch, yellow-rumped warbler, chipping sparrow, field sparrow, vesper sparrow, yellow-bellied sapsucker, and hermit thrush. Now, couple both of those groups with the flocks of American robins, the pine siskins, cedar waxwings, and eastern bluebirds that stop over, and you have yourself an avian festival in my own backyard. I even had a pair of wood ducks that visited the small pond on our property for 4 days. Now, March seems to be the time when the seasonal birds, the non-migratory birds, and the migrating birds overlap here in my area. It's an exciting time for a birder and a time to study and get to know many species of different birds. Yesterday, I actually heard my very first white-eyed vireo since last November, which means the spring migrants are arriving. I think the one bird that I am awaiting most of all this year is the yellow-billed cuckoo. It usually returns to my area between the end of April and the beginning of May. The yellow-billed cuckoo is a highly elusive species, and I plan on studying it intently this summer. I think it's also important to say that if you're interested in birding, it is a really good idea to learn the birds of each season in your location. For each of us, those species will be different. I'd like to end this episode with one of my favorite passages from a book by Florence A. Merriam, Birds Through an Opera Glass. Copyright date 1889. Thankfully, this book is in the public domain. It's a passage she titles Hints to Observers. When you begin to study the birds in the fields and woods, to guard against scaring the wary, you should make yourself as much as possible a part of the landscape. Most birds are not afraid of man as a figure, but as an aggressive subject. The observance of a few simple rules will help you to be unobtrusive. First, avoid light or bright colored clothing. A dull colored jacket and an old leaf colored hat that you can pull over your eyes or push back from your face as the light requires will do an excellent service. Second, walk slowly and noiselessly. Among the crisp rattling leaves of the woods, a bit of moss or an old log will help deaden your step at a critical moment. Third, avoid all quick, jerky motions. How many birds I have scared away by raising my glass too suddenly. Fourth, avoid all talking, or speak only in an undertone, a most obnoxious but important rule to young observers. Fifth, if the bird was singing but stops on your approach, stand still a moment and encourage him by answering his call. If he gets interested, he will often let you creep upon with your opera glass. Some of the most charming snatches of friendly talk will come at such times. 6. Make a practice of stopping often and standing perfectly still. In that way, you hear voices that would be lost if you were walking. 7. Conceal yourself by leaning against a tree or pulling a branch down in front of you. The best way of all is to select a good place and sit there quietly for several hours to see what will come. Then you get at the home life of the birds, not merely seeing them when they are on their guard. A low stump in a raspberry patch and a log in an alder swamp prove most profitable of seats. Then she adds one last part. For careful observation in general, 3 rules may be given. 1. In clear weather, be sure to get between the sun and the bird. In the wrong light, a scarlet tanager or a bluebird will look as black as a crow. 2. Gaze. Let your eyes rest on the trees before you, and if a leaf stirs or a twig sways, you will soon discover your bird. At a little distance, it is well to gaze through your looking glass. Number 3, beware of the besetting sin of observers. Never, ever jump to conclusions and prove all of your conjectures. Join me next time as we close out March, also International Women's Month, with a look at a few influential women in ornithology. Until then, I wish you so much joy, my birdiful friends. If you are enjoying the show, I would love it if you would follow or subscribe, rate, review, and then let others know about the podcast so we can continue to build a community of like-minded birders. Until next time, stay chirpy, my friends, and get outside, feel the sun upon your face and the wind in your hair, and bird for joy's sake. Bird for joy's sake, when you're needing more, a new beginning, feeling lost, alone, or blue, go into nature. Stroll to the melodious tunes of birdsong. Let it refresh your soul, fill your heart, lift your spirits. Yes, bird, for joy's sake. Witness the winged wonders, flitting, fluttering, playing hide and tweet. Is there anything else so sweet? I think not. We'll save for the chitter-chatter of my own nestlings as they filled my early days, but sigh no more, for they have long left the nest, and I now strive to find myself once again, discovering new things that I do best. Bird, for joy's sake, for our feathered friends have much joy to share, and it doesn't cost a dime, only time. And I don't know about you, but I am willing to give, to have a chance to live out my days, filled with curiosity, hope, and wonder, learning patience, the art of slowing down and being fully present, living in the moment, something I have long strived to achieve. Bird, for joy's sake, and keep looking up. Let their constant cheer infect you, their tenacity provide you with lessons of never giving up and looking on the brighter side of life. Prepare for entertainment with their quirky, chirpy silliness. Oh my, so much cuteness, happiness, and whimsy. You can't help but smile. And suddenly you'll discover worries cease, frustrations fade, chaos calms, and troubles melt away like snow in the spring. You will find yourself looking up and forward into the horizon, surrounded by song, hope, and happiness perched in your heart, feeling renewed and fulfilled. Go out into nature, take a stroll, let the avifauna rejuvenate your soul, and bird, for joy's sake,